morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming here. I'm Anika, here with Public Assets Institute as the campaign manager of Fund Vermont's Future, a coalition of organizations and individuals working to ensure that the state raises sufficient revenue to meet the needs of all people in Vermont. Thank you all so much for being here on this snowy day. I'd like to give a special thanks to the Fund Vermont Future Coalition, including the ACLU of Vermont, Public Assets Institute, Vermont Conservation Voters, the Vermont Early Childhood Advocacy Alliance, Vermont Natural Resources Council, the Vermont NEA, Voices for Vermont's Children, and our wonderful individual representatives, Alex Hilliard, Amanda Janu, and Hamdi Jafar. The reason we are here today is simple. It is time for the wealthiest Vermont residents to pay their fair share so we can build a Vermont that works for everyone who lives here. We are here because we know that the people of Vermont deserve to live in healthy, resilient, equitable communities where everyone has the support that they need to thrive. And we know that our state has the resources to meet all of our basic needs. We all see the effects of increased income inequality, as wages for the vast majority of Vermonters are not keeping up with rising costs of living. We see the effects of insufficient revenue being raised to provide basic services, and we see the inevitable costs of these goods and services, public goods that the government should be providing, being passed on to low and middle income taxpayers who can least afford them, while our current tax structure protects the wealth of a small number of residents. We are here today because we know that now is the time for action. By asking the wealthiest Vermont residents to pay their fair share in taxes, we can build a better Vermont that does not leave any Vermonter behind. We can fix our roads and bridges. We can expand broadband to all Vermonters, connecting our towns and communities. We can build and repair our schools and provide adequate education funding to ensure that every student in Vermont can thrive. We can clean up our lakes and rivers and protect our environment while allowing our towns to support businesses and create affordable housing. We can provide basic supports that give every Vermont family the opportunity to thrive. By asking the wealthiest Vermont residents to pay their fair share, we can build a Vermont that cares for every person who chooses to call our state home. Increasing taxes on the wealthiest Vermont residents is the right choice for our families and communities, the right choice for our businesses, and the right choice for our economy. When the wealthiest Vermonters pay their fair share, state policymakers can ensure that we are making the best financial decisions and spending money in the smartest way possible. Deferring expenses only costs more in the long run. Collecting the revenue that is available is the fiscally responsible choice. The people of Vermont believe in fairness, and they expect their elected representatives to meet this moment with action. Asking the wealthiest Vermonters to pay their fair share will make our state better for everyone, including our wealthiest residents. And so, I am so excited to be here today to announce the Fair Share for Vermont proposal. Fair Share for Vermont is a proposal to create a 3% personal income tax surcharge on annual income over $500,000. The proposal will only affect the wealthiest 2% of Vermont taxpayers and will raise nearly $100 million a year in state tax revenue. The Fair Share for Vermont proposal is a pathway for our elected leaders to meet this moment with action. The Vermont legislature has shown that it is prepared to take necessary steps to care for Vermont families. In recent years, the legislature has passed crucial legislation to provide for our children, to protect our environment, to keep us safe during the COVID-19 pandemic, and much more. We appreciate the work that our elected leaders have done, and we ask that in 2024, the legislature and administration take another step forward by enacting the Fair Share for Vermont proposal. At a time of skyrocketing income inequality and a pressing need for increased state revenue, support for this proposal will show that our leaders support working families, that they support thriving communities, and that they support building a Vermont that works for all Vermont residents. Thank you so much, and I will now pass the mic to Don Tinney, President of the Vermont NEA.
Thank you. Good morning, I'm Don Tinney, an English teacher who serves as the elected president of Vermont NEA. My fellow 13,000 members and I are committed to the students and families of this state, and that is why I am here today. In the decades since austerity budgeting firmly took hold, we too often have heard, we don't have enough money. Not enough money for clean water, not enough money for affordable housing, not enough money to repair our schools, not enough money for roads and bridges, not enough money to make health care affordable. But you know who always seems to have enough money? Vermont's wealthiest residents. Because of decades of tax policies that favor the accumulation of individual wealth instead of the common good, the quality of public services has declined for Vermonters, as well as all Americans who need them. At the same time, we have starved local and state governments. The gap between the wealthiest 2% of Vermonters and the rest of us has steadily grown through the decades. What history tells us over and over again is that when great chasms exist between the wealth of the few and the resources of the many, our society begins to fray. But it doesn't have to be that way. In the last century, we saw a drastic reduction in the taxes paid by Vermont's richest residents relative to their income. Indeed, marginal federal tax rates as high as 94% during the height of World War II fell to 50% in the 1980s, falling further to 37% today. In other words, funding those tax rates, which applied only to the very rich, disappeared from the public good and showed up in private bank accounts. Instead of paying their fair share, the very rich have had decades of tax policy aiding them as they built their own stores of cash. And that is why we are here today. By asking the wealthiest Vermonters to pay their fair share of taxes, we can generate nearly $100 million a year in badly needed revenue. Revenue that can make it easier for the single parent to afford health care. Revenue that can repair our roads and bridges. Revenue that can renovate our aging schools. Revenue that can be used for clean water. Revenue that can help alleviate the severe lack of affordable housing. Revenue that can be used for the common good. Vermont's wealthiest already have access to everything they need. Fair Share for Vermont merely asks the state's richest folks to pay their fair share in taxes so that we can build a Vermont that works for all of us. Thank you.
Hello everyone, it's so great to be with you all. My name is Hurl and I'm the Executive Director of Vermont Conservation Voters. VCV is here today as part of the Fund Vermont Future Coalition, calling on legislators to support the Fair Share for Vermont proposal, because we know that by raising revenue from the wealthiest Vermonters, we can build a brighter future together. Often, when we talk about the climate crisis, it can be pretty doom and gloom. And that's because a future where we choose not to tackle the major challenges that we're facing is pretty scary. Just this summer, we lived through devastating flooding, air quality impacted by wildfires, and we all watched as record-breaking heat waves tore through much of the country. But today, I'm here to celebrate a huge opportunity in front of us to raise revenue so we can make strategic investments and do things like helping all Vermonters transition to cleaner and more affordable ways to heat their homes and get around, ensuring clean water for all who live here, having the necessary funding to rebuild from this summer's floods in ways that make our communities more resilient to future storms, and to invest in well-planned housing projects that are climate smart and provide more homes at a time we desperately need them. So often in the State House, people agree on what we want for Vermont: a healthy environment, housing for all, an excellent education for all of our children, and so on. But then people throw up their hands and say, if only we had the money, Well, we're here today with a cake to celebrate and say there's a fair and responsible way to raise more money to take on the big challenges that we're facing. It's time for the wealthiest Vermonters to pay their fair share so we can build a Vermont that works for everyone who lives here. With that revenue, we can create a Vermont with a healthy environment, where everyone gets the health care they need, where students can learn in outstanding public schools, and where our infrastructure is more resilient and can support a vibrant economy. And making these essential investments can save us money in the long run. We hope legislators will advance this proposal to raise more revenue from the wealthiest Vermonters, which is an approach that other states are starting to take as well, so that we can build a brighter future for our children. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, my name is James Duff, Lyall. I'm the Executive Director of the ACLU of Vermont. We're proud to be part of this coalition and to support the Fair Share for Vermont campaign. We're here today to call on state legislators to ensure that the wealthiest among us pay their fair share in taxes so we can build a better state for all of us. Speaking for the ACLU of Vermont as an organization working to remedy deeply entrenched sources of inequality and to advance the rights and liberties of all people, economic justice is central to our vision for a more just and equitable state and a healthy, vibrant democracy. Today, because of extreme and growing wealth inequality, more and more of our neighbors are denied access to opportunity and basic necessities. As a result, many are prevented from exercising their civil rights and civil liberties to the fullest extent, participating in our democracy, and experiencing true freedom and equality in our society. As the ACLU has long recognized, wealth inequality also reinforces the many forms of systemic racism that we work to dismantle each and every day. When our state invests in people in the here and now, that is a very good investment for the long run, and it makes the state more sustainable for everyone. When we prioritize real solutions like affordable housing, healthcare, and education, for example, the benefits to our state and to Vermont workers and families are transformative. And we know what happens when we don't do that. We are seeing the consequences of withholding those investments and resources from our communities impact the health and well-being of our cities and towns every day. This has to change. Vermont does have the resources to better support all our communities and to ensure that all of our neighbors can thrive and everyone's rights are respected. What we need is leadership. We and our elected leaders must act with urgency, creativity, and compassion to meet the challenges that we face together. State legislators this year started to make investments for healthier, more resilient communities in housing, childcare, harm reduction strategies, and climate solutions. We applaud those efforts. At the same time, we know we must do far more to create a state budget that better addresses the needs of everyone who calls Vermont home. With more revenue from the state's wealthiest residents, we can build a Vermont with affordable housing, where no child goes hungry, where everyone gets the health care they need, and where our environment and infrastructure can sustain a vibrant economy and a strong democracy. That's why the members of this coalition and the Fair Share for Vermont campaign are here today, and that's why we look forward to working with legislators to advance this proposal in the coming year. We recognize there are other paths forward to raise revenue from those who can most afford it. And we hope legislators will explore all available options to prioritize Vermont workers, families, and communities. When they do that, it's important for our state legislators to know that they will have the support of this coalition and our members, as well as the vast majority of their constituents. Voters overwhelmingly support proposals like the one we are here advancing today. And those voters will be looking to their elected officials for solutions this coming year. We look forward to advancing more solutions together, and that has to include asking that the wealthiest among us contribute their fair share so that we can build a better state for all of us. Now with that, I'm going to turn it back to Anika for one more very important announcement. Thank you all very much.
Many thanks to Dawn, Lauren, and Duff. So as you can all see, we have a cake here today. This is a Vermont Millionaire's cake, representing income over $500,000 of a wealthy Vermonter. Today, we will be taking out a 3% slice of that income, a 3% slice that can be used on the needs of all Vermonters, while Vermont millionaires can have the rest of the cake and eat it too.